This is such a privilege, and it's so good to see all of Jill's friends here. 2 days after Christmas 1962, Jill Hepburn was born to Jim and Joyce Ryland of Menasha, Wisconsin. The youngest of 3 daughters, she completed the family. Both of her grandmothers were named Alice, so it seemed natural that Jill was given the middle name of Alice. When Joyce really wanted Jill's attention as a child, she became Jill Alice, often spoken in a loud voice and in one word, Jill Alice. After both Alices had left us, Jill changed her middle name to Ryland to honor her parents. Jill, her parents, and her sisters Jane and Julie shared a modest Cape Cod house a few minutes' walk west on 9th Street to a public boat ramp on the eastern shore of Little Lake Butamort. The cornfields that Jill remembers being across the street at the time and the lake were early elements that sparked Jill's lifelong love of the outdoors. Family fishing and Wisconsin camping trips helped. After a successful family fishing outing, Joyce fired up the grill and neighbors gathered for a backyard fish fry. Inside the house was another world. Jim, a printer by trade, had a strong sense of public service. He served on the boards of the Fox Valley United Way, the Menasha Education Fund, the Wisconsin Labor History Society, the Menasha Joint School District, the Menasha Public Library, the YMCA Senior Program, and was chairman of the Fox Valley Girl Scouts Council. This was community volunteering with a passion, and what child could ignore it? Dad had strong opinions, she said. Nothing was left unsaid. So right from the start, Jill was spinning out 2 strong threads that were woven tightly into the fabric of her adult life. Outdoors held the wonder and beauty of the natural world that could be enjoyed alone, freely, and in silence. Indoors, her parents set the example of community and public service. As a girl, she flourished as a Girl Scout, largely because it took her outdoors. She also flourished as a student inside the Menasha Public Schools, not only in academics, but as an athlete. You may have noticed that Jill is tall, and at 6'2", she excelled as the center of the girls' basketball team. As the Menasha Blue Jays' leading scorer, she often found her name in the local newspaper, local sports page. A basketball scholarship from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee brought Jill to Milwaukee in the fall of 1981. Arriving at UWM, however, she decided she'd had enough of basketball, gave up her scholarship, applied for loans and grants, and worked at several jobs to pay her rent and tuition. If she was decisive about basketball, she was less so about a major, considering from time to time nursing, marketing, and social work, among others. While accumulating 162 credits, she's packed with wisdom. She finally settled on her first love, the natural world. She graduated in 1987 with a degree in the biological aspects of conservation, or in a word, ecology. A word composed of 2 Greek words, ekos for home and logos for understanding. Ecologists seek to understand the connections of all living things with each other and with their home, the earth. Graduation was followed by a few years of several jobs that paid the rent. Fortunately, one of her jobs was at a local bank in the Milwaukee area, where she got some experience that helped her when she applied for a job at Ozaukee Bank on the corner of Highland Drive and Columbia Road in the historic old mill town of Cedarburg, 20 miles north of Milwaukee. She became the loan servicing manager, responsible for the accuracy and efficiency of the bank's commercial loan operation. She was good at it. The bank was also where she met Mal Hepburn, founder and president. And they married in May 1998 and moved into Sandhill Farm, a renovated farmhouse 2 miles east of the River Edge Nature Center in Saukville. Their son Jamie was born in June 1999. By this time, Jill had left the bank to become volunteer coordinator at River Edge, which lasted for 5 years. Around this time, little Jamie was learning some family traditions. When he was a young boy, he suggested to his mother one day, "Let's pretend we're volunteers." At River Edge, Jill organized the annual bike ride fundraiser in 2000, served on the board of directors from 2008 to 2014, and when Jamie reached school age and the Hepburns moved into Cedarburg, the Hepburns donated 40 acres of sandhill to the Nature Center. Jamie was enrolled into Cedarburg's Torsen Elementary School. Of course, Jill volunteered. She rounded up other volunteers to help out in the school's health room, cleaning up bloody scrapes on youthful elbows and knees, tending to kids with stomach aches, and the like. When she couldn't find volunteers, Jill filled in. That was indoors. She also presided over Torsen's outdoor classroom, which included a prairie. In 2010, she was awarded Torsen's annual Oak Leaf Award, recognizing persons who, quote, make Torsen a better place for our children. Jill's most meaningful impact was her dedication to the outdoor classroom and environmental education committee. Jill coordinated prairie burns, work days, and created activities for Earth Week, wrote Janice Levy, who nominated Jill for the award. The volunteering continued inside the home. Twice a month for 8 years, Jill, frequently with the help from Jamie, packed 125 bag lunches of sandwiches, hard-boiled eggs, cheese sticks, and other good things, I hope some of her cookies, and delivered them to Repairers of the Breach on Vliet Street in Milwaukee, a daytime sanctuary for homeless men and women. One day in the summer of 2012, Jill and her friend Pat Ross were having lunch in the Vintage Cafe across Washington Avenue from the Caldwell Banker Realty Company, then housed in the Joachim Wittenberg Mansion, when they noticed that the magnificent red brick house was for sale. They crossed the street and peered into the windows of the 1898 Queen Anne building. Oh my goodness, Jill thought, this should be the art museum Mel's always talked about. When Ozaukee Bank was sold to BMO Harris Bank of Chicago in 2007, Mal had negotiated for 49 pieces of Wisconsin art that he had assembled and shown in the banks from time to time. Jill said that he had hoped for years that Cedarburg would have an art museum, but he believed it wouldn't happen in his lifetime. Now, here was something new. Within days, Mal and Jill had toured the mansion and negotiated for its sale. Jill took the project on. She oversaw the renovation of the interior, which was in remarkably good shape, considering the building had been a boarding house and then a real estate office. Its original oak trim and stairway needed refinishing. The building was brought up to code for public use with the installation of a sprinkling system. Jill lined up the first volunteers and organized the first exhibits. She made appearances at the Lions Club, Kiwanis, and the Rotary Club, and other venues, seeking funds, support, and volunteers. Today, if you judge the 80 buildings along historic Washington Avenue on their worth historically and aesthetically, the Cedarburg Art Museum ranks near the top, if not at the pinnacle for both. A wider search of Cedarburg-related art began. Our once little German immigrant city, built of durable local stone and brick, has for years attracted artists from other places. Edmund Schiltknecht of Maine spent months here in 1927 capturing its charms in watercolor. More importantly, Bernhard Schneider, a German panorama painter from Milwaukee, lived his last 9 years here, often paying for his room and board with his magnificent oil paintings of local scenes before he died in 1907. The Cedarburg Art Museum has collected the paintings of both. Even the late E. Stephen Fisher, the stubborn mayor who refused to allow modernization of Cedarburg's distinctive architecture and thus saved the historic district, had been a Milwaukee-trained artist whose paintings are just now being gathered by the Art Museum to be shown for the first time this coming summer. After moving to Cedarburg from Milwaukee decades ago, Mal immediately saw our city's charm and began to acquire the best of the annual plein air paintings of 165 artists a year who splash colors on their canvases each summer. Cedar Creek and its dams and rapids, the stone mills and creekside parks, and the Washington Avenue historic buildings are frequent subjects. This place, our place, obviously feeds a human appetite for beauty and peace and demands an artistic response. The Cedarburg Art Museum, which would be a cherished asset in any city in Wisconsin, would not exist at all if Jill and Pat hadn't noticed the old mansion was for sale 12 years ago. If Jill hadn't alerted Mal to its possibilities, and if she hadn't worked herself to exhaustion for 6 years, getting it up and running, not entirely by herself, but by enlisting good early employees and volunteers who quickly recognized its potential and joined in the effort. Jill would be the first person here to tell you that she didn't do this alone, that she had essential help from many others who saw the worth of the project and donated their energy and talent to bring it about. I won't try to name you because I would miss some, but you know who you are. And you know, if you know Jill, you know you are appreciated. Furthermore, knowing her as I do, I know that she would rather be anywhere than standing before you tonight, receiving this award. She would love, for example, to be inside her kitchen as she loves to cook. She would love especially to be outdoors at her farm, an abandoned apple orchard of 40 acres that restores her and where she loses herself among her goats, ducks, chickens, and soon to arrive her pigs. Jill sets basic guidelines for herself that can be summed up in 3 words: kindness, generosity, empathy. Jill Hepburn loves this community of ours. She loves her husband, Mal. She loves her son, Jamie. She loves Mal's children and grandchildren as her own. And if you are here as her friend, I have this on good authority: she loves you too.
Thank you, Paul. That was a fine introduction. Cedarburg is special not simply because it exists, but rather because of the individuals that care enough to pursue what others might believe is too challenging, time-consuming, or unnecessary. Jill has pursued what others might not have and made our community a better place as a result. I'd like to invite Jill to the stage to formally award her the 21st Annual Civic Award.
That's how tall you need it for someone who's 6'2", right? Thank you all for being here. It means a lot to me, and thank you, Paul, for telling my story so beautifully. I can't thank you enough. And I'd also like to thank the people who nominated me and selected me for this award. I am honored and humbled. When I first started the museum, the recurring theme that I said to anybody that would listen is that I felt that the Cedarburg Art Museum could be a cog in the wheel of what is Cedarburg and what makes Cedarburg special. We got the Quilt Museum, the History Museum, our festivals, our shops, our parks, all of these things together make us who they are, and the museum would be part of that effort to keep our town special. So I'm already just not following my notes. So all these things are the cogs in the wheel that is Cedarburg. The people are what really makes it special. And it's those people who give their time and their effort. So if you'll just indulge me for a moment, and I try not to take up too much of your time, I'd like to use the Art Museum to illustrate. And you've heard a little bit of this from Paul, but I'm gonna, because it's part of how I wanted to tell the story, you'll hear a little bit again. So, as you know, Ozaukee Bank was sold to BMO Harris in 2008. At that point, the board of directors negotiated that Ozaukee Bank Foundation, that it supported the community, would stay in the community. And they wanted that to make sure that that money continued to support all those organizations that it had supported over time. Because you know, if you've worked in a nonprofit, if you all of a sudden lose a major funder, it's a big deal, right? So they negotiated that to stay in the community. So that's that first act of those people making a difference in the community. And so then part of Mel's, so the foundation is there, and then Mel says, wants to have sees this art community and wants to have an art museum, and so he has all this beautiful art on the wall that's local, and he negotiates those 49 paintings will stay in the community and will stay as a collection to start an art museum someday. And also a part of that board had in their minds put aside the money to start that museum at some point. So when we moved forward to 2012, and my good friend Pat and I peek in those windows and say, geez, this would make a really pretty art museum, and it really does. And the connection of that building to our history makes it the perfect building to be open to the community. And it was Pat's love of history that got us peeking in that window. And Pat went on to be one of our best, most active docents, and she wrote the history of the museum and the people who lived there, and it's on file today if you ever want to learn anything more about that, and we can't thank Pat enough for that. So I went home and I told Mal, and Mal said, well, whatever. He wasn't sure, he's like, Mal had done a lot, he was like, wasn't sure that he wanted to take this on, and I said, well, I'll help. And so he went to the board of the directors of the Ozaukee Bank Foundation, and they said, sure, let's do this thing. And we bought the building at the end of 2012, and in 2013, we put a advertisement in a press release in the news graphic, and we ended up asking for volunteers. So the first volunteer who calls me up, and I had to set up a table on the second floor of the art museum, and Cindy Simon calls me up and says, hey, I'd like to help with this project. And so as I have all these dog and pony shows where I'm talking to everybody I can think of about the art museum, there's Cindy, you know, helping me put together relish trays and all this sort of stuff. And she's just my right-hand man for that first year. She was just great, just really special to me. And then, you know, next, you know, people are, you know, calling. Carrie Hill calls, who's become a very good friend, and she's become such a loyal docent and helps at our art camp. She helps with our exhibition committee. She networks. She would docent, and she'd invite her friends to have coffee with her just so they'd meet the art museum, which was just brilliant. And then in comes Mary Shamati, and she came in, and I knew right away we had to get this woman on board. And Mary brought with her a love of art and some dormant curatorial skills, and while we didn't have the money to hire someone, Mary just stepped in and she became that curator we need. And I do believe that in a few short years, our museum rivaled any local art museum in Wisconsin. And I attribute a lot of that to Mary Shamati and her curatorial skills and the art exhibits that she put on. So we couldn't have done it without Mary. And all this, you know, so we're doing all this, and then the restoration work, and we have, the basement is gonna be our storage area, and it's just awful, cobwebby, needs to be painted and everything. So next thing I have, you know, like 7 women, we're down in the basement, we're scraping paint, you know, it's just awful. But they did it, and we painted the walls, and we're all, you know, it's just one of those things that had to be done, and there was people there to do it. And I have to say, echo what Paul said, that the building was in beautiful shape. It really was. And that is a tribute to, I think, Ted Bertel, who bought the building, did some restoration, and then Coldwell Banker and those realtors who understood what they had there. And so, and somewhere along the way, it's my understanding, someone drywalled that front foyer area, so no one, and that saved that area, I'm convinced. So, so we had that little cog in that wheel, those people helping, making sure that this building is here for us today. Then one of the next person that made a huge impact on the art museum that walks in the door is Chris Kristen. And a lot of you know Chris, and a lot of you know what an impact she had on the art museum. And she started, she and Lynn Reel worked together, got the gift shop up and running, and Lynn still runs that gift shop today with the Plum. She does a great job representing local artists, and we couldn't have, that's just a really special part of the art museum, and thanks to Lynn, who has put in all that effort. So Chris, in 2014, became our first paid director, but the time and energy put into the museum went far beyond what that title suggests. She elevated the museum with creative programming. She substantially enlarged our volunteer pool, and she got the beer garden up and running, and that was really important. And then that's, you know, I could go on all day with all the little things that Chris did to take us to that next level at that point in time. Then there was, for years and years, where Mary Ann, Jill, Karen, Claudia, Pat, and Cindy cleaned the museum for us every Wednesday. And that's as if it was their own home. The museum always looked really just sharp because of those women. And then there was, you know, Luann Peterson and Steve Schultnick, who have been gardening with us since the beginning. And then all the other people who help out with the garden. And I point out them because they have been there since, you know, they were there from day one with the gardening. And just wanted to illustrate that. So I'm losing my train of thought again here. Our docents keep the doors open, welcome guests to our beautiful home. Felia, Cindy, Leslie, Sue, Dave, Carol, and Doris, just to name a few. Doris Combs was there every Saturday for probably the first 2 to 3 years, and for me that was just a godsend because otherwise I had to do it. And so I had my Saturday afternoons off thanks to her. But a lot of these people ended up wearing other hats too, you know, so everybody just pitching in wherever they could. I don't want to forget Shirley and Bruce Krensky, because without them, and Eric and Cindy Grassel, the beer garden would not be what it is today. And again, I'm being a little redundant here, they're everywhere in the museum. They've helped with every little single task, and they've been invaluable, and I can't thank them enough. And again, just that idea that we have all these people who have helped. And but if you stop in the summer, if you stop by in our beer garden, there's Terry and Jane, I see Lori back there, they're going to serve you up a beer, and there's lots of beer volunteers doing that. Probably one of our happiest jobs. We are surrounded by jacks of all trades who'll do whatever is asked. Brooke Brown is found everywhere at the museum, from docenting to schlepping art to chairing our collections committee. John Duffy and Ron Zingler add their carpentry skills to the museum, including helping our son Jamie complete his Eagle project by building picnic tables for the beer garden. Our granddaughters Kylie and Aubrey started out as campers and eventually became part of that group of teens that help run our summer camps. And then I just want, I don't want to forget the people who have provided the leadership, because when I left the board, Blaine Gibson took over as president, and he brought his own unique perspective to the museum. And any strong organization needs a good transition, and I think that transition to Blaine he did a great job, and he also, his kind and gracious and unflappable personality got us through COVID, right? Because that was a tough time. But then along comes Dynamo Pam Health, and she brings us out of the malaise of COVID and just gets us going again. And now we have Tom Felmer, who's helping us out in the leadership role, and he helped us get that book, The History of Wisconsin Art, which is the seminal work on that subject, which will be important for decades to come. And Tom helped us push that over the finish line and got that published. And that is part of what that belongs to the Art Museum, but it belongs to Cedarburg. Cedarburg published this awesome art history book that is used in colleges, and it's pretty amazing. Yes. As Paul said, and I broke my cardinal rule of working with volunteers by shouting out people by name, because you always miss somebody. So I apologize to anybody I miss, because I have just nothing but fondness for the people in the heart that helped me at the museum. So if I missed you, it's not because I don't love you and appreciate you. And my favorite part of volunteering is the people I meet. And what you see in Cedarburg is the sum total of the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours spent to make our community strong and beautiful. And for that, I thank all of you. So thank you for the award, and thank you for what you do to make Cedarburg wonderful.